alleged tender irregularities at the parastatal during his tenure as Minister of Public Enterprises. According to the ANC step-aside rule, any member charged in court must relinquish positions in government and all party structures. The National Consumer Commission has announced the recall of certain Isuzu vehicles and Ducati motorcycles. 10 Isuzu RT66 bakkie cars are being recalled due to an airbag fault that may cause it to malfunction during a collision. The affected bakkies were sold between July and August this year. Ntutuzela Nene has more.
Ducati South Africa is also recalling its 2018 to 2024 Panigale 4 models as well as its 2020 to 2025 Street Fighter motorcycles. According to the company, the recall affects 290 motorcycles sold nationwide. It says the rear wheel shafts of the affected motorcycles may lose its structural integrity, which could lead to complete failure. Owners of the affected cars and motorcycles are urged to arrange for inspections and repairs at their nearest dealerships at no cost. Ndutuzelo Nene, Eyewitness News.
Controversial businessman Brown Mokhotsi has been accused of being a professional liar during cross-examination at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry. Mokhotsi, who claims to be a crime intelligence agent, has been accused of previously lying under oath. During proceedings today, evidence leader Advocate Matthew Chuckleson pushed Mokhotsi to admit that his job required him to lie, citing specific instances contained in a statement to the Commission. Arun Singh has more.
Madlanga Commission Chief Evidence Leader Advocate Matthew Chuckleson accused Brown Mokhotsi of lying under oath before the Commission and on a previous occasion. Mokhotsi previously made a 252 application for authorization to conduct an undercover police trap, claiming he was attached to Police Minister Senzo Mcunu's office.
Your role as an agent essentially makes you a professional liar. You lie as your job.
Mokhotsi concedes he has to lie as part of his job, but claims it must be done responsibly.
I may not have a comprehension about lying as a profession. As an agent, there are rules. You cannot just lie if you are not in any mission.
Mokhotsi will continue to be interrogated on his claims when the Commission resumes tomorrow. Arun Singh, Eyewitness News.
Meanwhile, in the National Assembly, Minister Senzo Mcunu's Chief of Staff, Cedric Nkabinde, has been taken to task for referring a complaint about National Commissioner Fani Masemola to the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption. Evidence leader Advocate Norman Arendse says Nkabinde's decision to refer the complaint against Masemola to IDAC was inappropriate because it led to the arrest of crime intelligence boss Dumsani Khumalo. Nkabinde was facing questions around his sworn statement before Parliament's ad hoc committee investigating police corruption today. Babalo Ndenze has that story.
Cedric Nkabinde told the ad hoc committee that National Coloured Congress MP Fadil Adams' complaint showed how he had lost confidence in the National Commissioner. He says reporting Fani Masemola for nepotism and fraud to IDAC was the only option. But evidence leader Norman Arendse put it to Nkabinde that his referral was inappropriate and got Dumsani Khumalo arrested.
You will say, well, you referred it to IDAC, they had to do their job, they had to do the investigations, and they're the ones who arrested him and had him charged. But it started with your referral, which I want to submit to you in conclusion on this point, to be entirely inappropriate. That's putting it mildly.
Nkabinde says the IDAC considered the complaint, but they were not expecting any feedback because it reports to the Justice Minister. Babalo Ndenze, Eyewitness News, Parliament.
Transport Minister Barbara Creecy says South Africa's aviation sector is fully equipped and prepared to welcome international visitors attending the G20 Leaders Summit this weekend. The OR Tambo International Airport, Waterkloof Air Force Base and Lanseria Airport will serve as entry points for the heads of state who are expected to begin arriving tomorrow. Creecy shared the details during a State of Readiness media briefing in Ekurhuleni this afternoon. She says the country's ports of entry have met all security and safety requirements needed to manage the influx of international delegates.
On the 25th of October this year, we had our first dry run, which demonstrated the readiness of all the ports of entry, and it set a benchmark for a high standard of operational excellence for this important Leaders Summit.
And former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel says a lack of cooperation between nations will only stagger the progress made towards a shared global vision on growth and development. Manuel made the comments while addressing delegates at the B20 summit currently underway at the Sandton Convention Centre. This is the business leg of the G20 under South Africa's presidency, which comes to an end this week. Global cooperation is among themes on the table, with some global leaders pushing for multilateralism in the face of strong skepticism by US President Donald Trump. Trump's return to the White House and his approach to foreign policy have shifted traditional multilateralism. Manuel says fragmentation has no place in the global order.
It's about respect between nations and developing systems that advance people. And that now is very broken, and that's what we need to understand in order to engage with it going forward. The question is not that might is right, but how nation states accommodate each other in order to advance the betterment of everybody. That's a big challenge. And if you don't have that, you don't have the predictability that allows for decision making anywhere, whether in business or government. That's a big challenge that confronts us now.
Gold's trading at $4,090.33 an ounce. The rand's at 17.21 to the dollar, at 22.51 to the pound, at 19.87 to the euro. Brent crude oil's at $63.45 a barrel.
In your world of sports, Dumas Tutua has backed Oxenchair to win the World Rugby Player of the Year award, while the Boks gear up for a grudge match against Ireland on Saturday. And then in the T20 Challenge, Dragons ended their campaign on a high note, securing a super over win against the DP World Lions.
A look at your weather. Partly cloudy skies in store for Gauteng tomorrow, with afternoon thunder showers expected. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 13 degrees and peak at highs of 23. Pretoria is at 14 and 25. Vereeniging's at 13, also reaching highs of 25 degrees. Cape Town said to be fine and windy with strong southeasterly winds tomorrow at a low of 18 and a high of 27 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour. Following a fresh corruption charge levelled against him, ANC Member of Parliament Malusi Gigaba has voluntarily stepped aside from all party duties.
EWN, in touch, in tune and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app. EWN Traffic.
Well, at this hour, if you're heading towards Brakpan, there's still those roadworks causing heavy delays in the Sunwood Park, Boksburg area. That's the N17 eastbound between Rondebolt and Carnival City. Tembisa heading towards Irene. We still have bumper traffic. This is on the R21 northbound approaching Olifantsfontein Road. In the Calvin Alex area, roadworks causing heavy delays. This is on the N3 southbound between the Interchange and London Road, while in the Mother City, there's slow-moving traffic. M3 southbound between UCT and Clipper Road. There's also bumper traffic. N1 outbound between Century City and Belleville. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB. ABSA is a registered FSP. Good evening. Welcome to the program. 10 minutes after 6. I'm Stephen Grootes. Well, I'm lucky enough to work in Sandton during one of those moments when it kind of feels like, you know, half the business world is here, and by which I mean there are a lot of people from a lot of different countries here for the B20. I was there earlier this morning, just as things were sort of kicking off the real business of it after the big start last night, and you certainly got a sense of the international flavour. Lots of people from different places. I noticed also plenty of people, our business leaders, what I would call Money Show regulars, you would bump into if you went to the B20, if you were joining me there. And John Perlman, of course, he was there. Clement Maniatella there as well today. I was interested, lots of people commenting on this. I noticed that the American Business Organization seems to have made a bit of a splash. Now, just a reminder, the Trump administration hath decreed that the United States government will not play any part in the G20, so they just won't be here at all. I don't know, does President Ramaphosa sort of hand the presidency to an empty chair? I don't know what you do. There'll be something, I suppose. At the time, I thought that was interesting. Well, we'll talk a bit more about the B20. A couple of interesting conversations. I bumped into Colin Coleman, the chair of the Youth Employment Service. He's got some comments to make about it. We'll talk also to some of the people involved in the conversation. Stavros Nicolaou is one of them. And, of course, the Minerals Council also having a big conversation around this as well. Mzilim Tanjani, you'll hear him. He's the CEO at the Minerals Council. You'll hear him before 7 o'clock. Sun International announcing and sort of reporting on very high occupancy rates. I thought that was very interesting. They say they think it's really economic growth. We'll hear a bit more from their CEO in just a moment, Marcel van Oorlog. Also, I must just tell you, fascinated by the conversation, by the journey that Barry van Zyl has had. He's your shapeshifter tonight. Probably was famous mostly for some of the work he had done with Johnny Clegg, an international drummer. Had played with plenty of other people, and now has gone into a completely different route and runs the MBA program at Henley Business School. That's not a journey I think I would predict for anyone. I found that very interesting. Good to hear from you tonight on 011 883 0702 0214 460567 and of course voice notes on 072 702 1702.
The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes, live on 92.7 and 106 FM. Streaming on the Prime Media Plus app
and DSTV channel 856.
Business Unusual tonight in about an hour. We'll speak to Advita Naidu from Jackhammer Global. Her conversation is, how do you resign gracefully? How do you resign elegantly? And no one wants to hear those stories. You want to hear the guy who did this or the guy who did that or the person who took my favorite stories, my favorite resignation stories are the ones where the IT people are sort of kicked out with short notice and they take all the passwords with them. They don't deliberately change them. They just, don't pass them on, or they know that they'll expire and there's utter chaos. I mean, some of the best resignation stories you might have heard, and I'm sure you've heard some in your time. I mean, it leads to another question. If you have an exit interview, how honest are you? I mean, if you want to come back, maybe. Some industries you do, and some companies you do. This will be temporary. But how honest are you in an exit interview? I'd really like your story, please, on 072 702 1702.
702. Stephen is on X
at Stephen Grootes.
Southern Sun confirming today its hotels were 60.6% full for the 6 months to the end of September. Also seems to be a lot of demand for rooms for the G20 and the B20 conferences. Marcel van Oorlog is the Chief Executive Officer of Southern Sun. Marcel, good evening. Do appreciate the time. Your occupancy rates for October, so that comes after the period you're reporting, but just last month, they were over 70%. That's really strong demand. Where's it coming from?
It was across the board, and that's what kind of caught us by surprise too. We had a budget or a forecast, I think of about 66, and October just took off. And for us as a group, I mean, we're big. We've got 15,000 rooms. To get to those kind of numbers, you've got to be full everywhere. You can't have a weak region. And we saw it, Durban beachfront through to Kimberley, Polokwane, Bloemfontein. It was a really strong month, and that one swallow doesn't the summer make, but it is noticeable. It's the highest occupancy. It's the first time we've beaten World Cup 2010 occupancy. So it's a proper month.
I mean, obviously B20 and G20 maybe. There wasn't a huge amount of other things going on. Could maybe people just be wanting to get back out in the sun again?
Yeah, and look, summer definitely helps. When the trees go green, travel picks up without a doubt. But to get that sort of thing, you've got to have everything. So we had a lot of conferences, we had a lot of sports events, but we also had a lot of transient business travel, what I call people going about their work, no matter what it is. But they had a reason to travel. And it was countrywide, and it was across all segments, from your 5-star hotel down to your budget hotels. Were also much better than normal. And I think it's positive sentiment. I think it is a little bit of end of winter. I mean, it was helped by a poor September, because that 24th of September Heritage Day weekend falls on a Wednesday this year. And that's awful for business travel. So everyone just pushes it out. But that said, we've had public holidays for 15 years and we haven't beaten the World Cup number until now. So we'll take it whence it comes.
Okay. No, well, I mean, of course. Your international operations, they made a loss for the period that you're reporting on. And from what I could see, I presume primarily because of the closure of the Paradise Sun, it's in the Seychelles. Quite important to your operations?
It's a little hotel, but it's a very profitable hotel. It does exceptionally high rates. It's 80 rooms. And the difference between it being open and closed is about 30 million after tax. Now, in a half year where we make about 330 million, there's 10% of your earnings just because we closed it. But it was a full-blown refurb. So we've got new bathrooms, bedrooms. We took down the public areas, rebuilt them from scratch, new beach bar. So it needed to be closed to do. You can't try and trade through that. And it opened up 15 September, and in October it did 81% and really nice rates. So it is just a thing that sticks out in the half year. We make about a third of our profits in the first half of the year and 2/3 in the second half, because our peak months are all in the second half of the year. So where you do something like that, it makes an exaggerated effect on the numbers.
No, sure. No point opening if there's no beach bar. You signed another 50-year lease quite recently with the eThekwini Metro. This was for that complex. It's the Elangeni and the Maharani Towers. I mean, that's prime beachfront in Durban, but Durban's been through a lot in the last few years, Marcel. I mean, there were a couple of years, there was a Christmas or two where Umhlanga in particular was really battling because of what was happening in the water. Is that property still vitally important to your portfolio? I mean, it must be.
So the nice thing was, in the month I signed the lease, we traded at 80.2% or something. So, it does make you feel more confident. At least it was bulgingly full around us. There's been a definite improvement in Durban. And, that doesn't get into the media because they've had, the beaches have been closed for 10 days in the last year. I think the year before that, it was something like 100 days. That's a substantially, and you're always going to have a period. You have big storms, so the rivers come down. There's nothing you can do about it. And it's had a substantial improvement. The crime rates are really, really low. Like we haven't had incidents, touch wood, in a long time. So Durban has, I think, has definitely turned a corner. There's been a political will change there that has allowed Musa to do his job as city manager. And we really didn't want to lose those leases. They are important properties. And we've got not just the Elangeni Maharani, we've got 3 other hotels on the beachfront. So we're very invested in making sure that is fixed and that it stays fixed. And I think it is absolutely fixable. I mean, the improvement they've made in the last year or so is phenomenal. And it comes down to doing the basics right. Tending to the infrastructure, enforcing the bylaws, no public drinking, cleaning up the litter. And if you go there, you see the difference. It really works. And we've seen our summer sale for December was launched about 2 weeks ago, I think. And most of the demand was for Durban, and Elangeni was the biggest property for that. So Durban did go through a tough time, but I think it's coming right.
Marcel van Oorlog, thanks very much indeed. Chief Executive Officer of Southern Sun.
702. Stephen is on The Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Well, I mentioned earlier I was at the B20 this morning and just sort of having a look around, seeing who was there as things were getting going. I made the point that there was a sense of real kind of excitement. I think people are quite keen to get going. I think people are quite keen to have some conversations, to have some constructive conversations, to look at what can actually be done. And also, of course, just having a conversation around what some of the big issues are that business is facing at the moment. Nokokanyo Mtambo, there's the EWN reporter who's there for us. Nokokanyo, good evening. There are quite important conversations going on. There's a very interesting vibe there as well. What struck you so far today?
So quite a lot. Good evening, Stephen, and to the listeners as well. Quite a lot. You know that this has been really a culmination of months of a lot of deliberations when it comes to the B20 track, the collaboration and the innovation, not just in South Africa, on the African continent, and then, of course, across the entire globe as well. So there's a number of themes that over the course of the year that they've looked at. And again, today, just really a reflection on some of those key matters. Speaking about digital transformation, that divide being a critical barrier to growth, where you see billions of people still offline and still lacking digital skills. And that's quite important to growing the economy. And so part of the recommendations, and this was even in a pack of recommendations handed over by the B20, much earlier in the year, I think it was a month ago, so when we had the first set of recommendations handed over. So when we speak about the digital transformation, Stephen, those recommendations including the expanding your inclusive infrastructure, embedding your digital and AI education. The more we see those innovations come through when it comes to AI, the more we're needing to incorporate them into our systems as well as business and how, we do business. When we speak about employment and education, the conversations there around the global unemployment. South Africa has an unemployment crisis. How do we address that? How do we bring down those numbers? We obviously have a skills mismatch. There's a gender inequality, and all of those were told as part of that package again, or some of what, limits inclusive growth. And so when we speak about employment and education, we then have recommendations that include, bringing in affordable early childhood education, your youth employment pathways, and removing the barriers to participation for the marginalized groups already. Some of the other things, Stephen, and the other themes, of course, the just energy transition. That's really a big one. And that particular task force, again, today, speaking about the need for fair and inclusive global energy transition, prioritizing your transition finance, you're localizing your clean energy manufacturing, building skills, also amongst that. Earlier in the week, Stephen, we had also attended a conversation with with Standard Bank Group CEO, who's also the chair of the Finance and Infrastructure Task Force within the B20. And again, the conversations there are, trying to address the widening infrastructure gap, especially when we're speaking about emerging economies, and the developing economies. So trying to get that capital access, making sure that there's project investability, and making sure that that's addressed as well. So quite a lot of things, Stephen, that were addressed in this particular summit. Now, again, these recommendations, including the issues of trade and investment, which is obviously a big one when we speak about Africa continental intra-trade, Stephen, trying to make sure that the Africa continental free trade area is effective. So all of these are just among, recommendations that will again be tabled to the G20 leaders when we go into the weekend. So hopefully we see implementability of these particular recommendations.
Noko Kanya, thank you so much. Noko Kanya on Tambo, the EWN reporter, part of the team covering the B20 for us. Well, picking up on that theme around youth unemployment, I bumped into Colin Coleman at the B20. He's the chair of the Youth Employment Service. I asked him, after all of the good news we've seen in the last week, are things finally aligning in the right direction?
Well, let's say it's very welcome for South Africa to get some good news. The question is this a bottom or is this a false bottom? The question is one, what the fundamentals and what's the possibility the trajectory is going to turn around, and really one has to target 3% growth rates. No economist is talking about anything more than 1.8% growth rates in the next 3 years, and that's insufficient for us to deal with our structural flaws. So my calls for us to do some fundamental rework of the budget, of industrial policy, of policies around SME and micro enterprises, and really getting rid of some of the spending that is, I think, wasteful, and certainly get rid of the corrupt spending, and reinvesting in the high multiplier areas like the MPA, supporting the tax system, and so on and so forth. So the question is, do we have the political will to turn what is a promising set of data into a long-term turnaround?
One of the things that I see all of the changes, the Eskom improvements, the Transnet improvements. I see the will in many places, Operation Vulindlela. I don't know if I see a focus on our fundamental problem, which is youth unemployment. That to me has got to be the fundamental issue. Do we need to be maybe a bit more focused, or am I missing the point?
No, we absolutely have to be more focused. The problem, I think, in general terms, is that there are spots of good news, and there are many areas in which there's wasteful, corrupt expenditure, and I've been quite public in talking about the fact that there is this wave of criminality and the wave of the merging of political criminal interests that we are seeing in the Madlanga Commission, and this is extremely devastating to economic prospects. So we need to tackle both the economic and the security and rule of law issues simultaneously. And the question is, do we have a coherent state that is coherently tackling both at the same time? I don't think so at this point.
That state building is so important, the building the capacity of the state, and yet it takes such a long time, and yet there are so many kind of big political movements, you know. I don't know who the next leader of the ANC is. I don't know what that means for the national coalition, things like that.
Yeah.
Is political risk kind of the issue?
I do think there is a significant fluidity, both in the Democratic Alliance and in the ANC, and therefore in the centre of the government of national unity or the coalition government. I think there is sufficient instability in South Africa to suggest that we cannot actually proceed confidently with a view that 3.5 years' time we'll have another national election. I think there's plenty of signs that we are going to have an early election in South Africa, and that's likely to bring about a point at which South Africans will have the opportunity to decide where South Africa is headed. I think it's probable that the DA will strengthen and the ANC will weaken, and therefore they'll converge around the centerpiece of around 30% each in an election, and that will produce a government of national unity or a coalition that is really a partnership of equals, as opposed to at the moment one big player and one small player. That will be much better for South Africa in terms of the probability that people of merit will find their way into the centre of government, and you'll have a much stronger set of expertise at the centre of government, which is what we need to run and execute a better program.
Colin Coleman there, the chair of the Youth Employment Service at the B20 earlier this morning.
The Money Show.
The Markets.
Greg Hudson-Illenborgen is director at Sanlam Private Wealth. Greg, good evening. Platinum shares. So I get that the platinum price is slightly higher, gold is higher too, but platinum shares really do seem to be yo-yoing at the moment.
Stephen, well, look, it's, the whole market was yo-yoing in the last couple of days, particularly the resources. So it wasn't only platinum right across the board. The gold shares also took quite a hammering over the last couple of days. Today was a much better day for both platinum and gold. But I think it's all related to a risk-off sentiment. Markets really being worried about talk that the Fed won't need to cut again this year. And of course that sent gold into a little tailspin, and I think that the allied precious metals like platinum and palladium moved in sync with that.
Life Healthcare, an update today. The market really didn't like it.
Yeah, so look, this relates to an adjustment, they call it, of 2.9 billion. They had a business that they sold, but they've got a pre-existing liability there, and they have to relates to earn-out payments to future sales. So they've taken that reduced their earnings about 2 rand per share. So they're going to have an annual loss from basically related to the disposals of these companies that they sold. So they think they'll have a overall loss between 104 and 108 cents for the 12 months. And their patient days, increased by only 1.1%. So I think it wasn't a great set of results. Over 9.5 million shares traded, and the stock closed at 11 rand 11 cents. So, but their earnings per share and everything is expected to drop because of that. But they still say they expect to deliver a good trading performance in the majority of its facilities. But they also bought a business that does the kidney dialysis, and that hasn't performed well as well. So that still has to be fully integrated, I suppose, so over time. But not a great set of results.
And very quickly, if you can, Greg, Marcel van Oorlog, the CEO at Southern Sun, quite bullish, I thought.
Well, I like this business, Stephen. I think it's a good business. Their occupancy rates were the best since the 2010 World Cup in South Africa, so that's very thing. But they took a bit of a hit on their offshore operations because their very successful hotel in the Seychelles, Paradise Sun, they closed it temporarily and to refurbish it. But so that was a bit of a hit to their bottom line. But from what I hear, that the hotel is open to great acclaim, so I expect that the next set of results from this company will be a lot better. But, you know, they have, besides the Santon hotels, they also own that Birchwood conference centre that government uses quite a lot. So I expect that, and with the next set of headlines you'll probably read, that the G20 was pretty good for business as well.
Greg Hudson-Limburg, thank you, Director at Sanlam Private Wealth. Just after 6:30. Time for the latest eyewitness news now. Maki Malapo, good evening to you, and obviously Malusi Gigaba.
That's right, Stephen. Good evening. Following a fresh corruption charge levelled against him, ANC Member of Parliament Malusi Gigaba has voluntarily stepped aside from all party duties. The ANC welcomed the decision in a statement a while ago. This means Gigaba will step aside from both his positions in the party's National Executive Committee and in the National Assembly. Yesterday, Gigaba made his first appearance before the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court on a corruption charge alongside 4 former Transnet executives, namely Brian Malefe, Siyabonga Gama, Anaj Singh and engineer Tamsanqa Giani. The charges relate to alleged tender irregularities at the parastatal during his tenure as Minister of Public Enterprises. According to the ANC step-aside rule, any member charged in court must relinquish positions in government and all party structures. Stats SA has identified the Northwest as the province with the highest inflation rate in October, with consumers there feeling the pinch of pricier goods. The province recorded an inflation rate of 4.3%, while the Eastern Cape was on the other end of the spectrum with 3.1%. In addition to the usual CPI print, Stats SA also published the inflation rates for each province and for different expenditure bands today. Chief Director for Price Statistics at Stats SA, Petra Kelly, says overinflation climbed for a second consecutive month in October.
Annual consumer inflation rose to 3.6% in October from 3.4% in September. This is the highest inflation print in more than a year, that is, since September 2024, when the rate was 3.8%. The CPI increased by 0.1% month on month in October 2025.
Kelly says affluent households were also not spared in October.
While the poorest sections of our community typically experience higher inflation rates, in October, the richest group recorded the highest inflation rate at 3.9%.
The Social Security Agency says it's cutting down the number of identity fraud cases as it attempts to root out corruption of the 370 Rand Social Relief of Distress grant. Parliament heard today that the National Treasury has imposed further directives on the agency to tighten its controls and reduce corruption as conditions to its 8 billion Rand annual allocation. SASSA says it's now conducted biometric checks on all SRD recipients. Lindsay Dentlinger has more.
Treasury requires SASSA to submit quarterly reports on the checks it's carried out to ensure all grant recipients are eligible and legitimate. 259,000 beneficiaries were identified for checks in the first phase of the review, which caused mayhem at SASSA offices in September. Grants Administrator Brenton van Vrede says it has not been practical to do bank checks for alternative income upon grant registration, as the banks require time to produce the information.
We also have implemented a check on our bank verification process to only allow fully figured accounts to be verified. So if an account is not yet fully figured, we won't pay money into that account.
In the first phase of the review, more than 34,000 grants were either suspended or had lapsed, while 8,500 beneficiaries had their grant value reduced after income checks. Lindsay Dentlinger, Eyewitness News, Parliament.
And in America, former U.S. Treasury Secretary Larry Summers is stepping down from the board at OpenAI a week after a tranche of emails between him and late convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein was released. In a statement to the BBC, Summers said he was grateful for the opportunity to have served, excited about the potential of the company, and looks forward to following their progress. Summers, who was also once the president of Harvard University, said on Monday that he'd be stepping back from public commitments over his ties to Epstein. The recently released emails showed Summers communicated with Epstein until the day before Epstein's 2019 arrest for the alleged sex trafficking of minors. Meanwhile, the artificial intelligence company said in a statement that it respected Summers' decision to resign. A look at your weather. A partly cloudy Thursday in store for Gauteng with afternoon thunder showers expected tomorrow. Temperatures will drop to alternating overnight lows of 13 and 14 degrees and peak at highs between 23 and 25 degrees. Cape Town said to be fine and windy with strong southeasterly winds at a low of 18 and a high of 27 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News. Following a fresh corruption charge levelled against him, ANC Member of Parliament Malusi Gigaba has voluntarily stepped aside from all party duties.
EWN Traffic.
Well, at the moment in the Sharon Lee area, you can still expect more than a 30-minute delay. This is on Malibongwe Drive between the N1 and Belez, while in Meadell, heading towards Devland Eldorado Park, there's also bumper-to-bumper traffic on the Golden Highway between Chris Honey Road and the N1. In Sunwood Park, Boxburg, roadworks causing some delays on the N17 eastbound between Rondebolt and Carnival City, while in the Mother City, slow-moving traffic M3 southbound between UCT and Clipper Road, and there's also bumper-to-bumper traffic on the N2 outbound between Mowbray Main and Airport Approach. If you come across any other traffic issues, please WhatsApp us on 072-702-1702.
There's more EWN on air, online, and on the EWN app.
Beyond every boardroom is a story waiting to be written. A story of a business and its potential, of a community that thrives, a hospital that serves, and energy that powers millions of dreams. It's a story that only gets better with a partner that has the expertise and solutions to make it a reality. At ABSA CIB, we are invested in your story, and we invite you to write it with us, because your story matters. ABSA, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Progress builds. It moves, and it has a partner. That partner is Anglo-American. Together, we're building progress where it matters most across South Africa. With a 1 billion rand investment into education in our host communities, $15 million pledged to the Global Fund to support community-based health services, 1.6 billion rand in deals facilitated through our Impact Finance Network. And as a sponsor of B20 and G20, we're bringing that same spirit of partnership to a global stage, proving that when collaboration is real, progress moves faster. South Africa has a partner. Join the conversation on social media. Anglo-American, mining potential, building beyond.
Step into a world of unforgettable experiences in Dubai. From luxury beaches to underwater adventures. From authentic traditions to futuristic museums. Make it a Dubai adventure to remember with Emirates. Fly to Dubai from one of 3 gateways in South Africa. Start your holiday the moment you board with delicious regional meals, complimentary drinks, and up to 6,500 channels of entertainment. Fly Emirates. Fly better.
WhatsApp Stephen
on 072
702
1702.
21 minutes to 7 the time. Well, amid all of the B20 discussions, I did ask you for some of your best resignation stories. Didn't have to be you, often better if it's you. We'll talk about how to resign elegantly after 7 o'clock. There is a way to do it, so I'm told. But your best resignation stories?
Hi, Stephen. Usually at exit interviews, I'm not really honest. And what I did when I used to work at the motor industry as a sales executive in the fleets department. So what I did before I resigned, basically, I made sure that I changed all the information of my fleet customers. So I wouldn't delete the information on the system, but I would change their numbers and email addresses.
Wow!
So that and as well as their names, so that they're not able to poach my customers after I have left the company, because my customer is my customer. I work hard to get those fleet deals.
Wow.
And I made sure that I changed the information. The information will still be there, but the contact details will be false because I had changed them.
Hi, Stephen. Great show as always. With regards to exit interviews, I always try to keep it neutral. I find that companies conduct exit interviews to keep on record to see if they can consider you in the future should you want to come back to the company, be it for the same position or a different position. It's not necessarily for them to do things better. So I always keep it neutral, and I never really say exactly why I'm leaving. I just say the usual, just looking for more growth, and that's about it.
Sure. So interesting. I mean, I hear your exit interviews. I don't know how honest you'd be. But wow, changing all the information of the customers, that's wild. What a good story. Your best resignation stories, 072 702 1702.
EWN Sport.
Tato, how's it? Okay, so World Rugby need to make sure we don't resign from World Rugby because of how we're being treated. So as a result, some Boks are nominated for the World Rugby Player of the Year.
That is correct, Stephen. In fact, 3 of them. We are talking about Pieter Steph du Toit, Malcolm Marx and Oxenchair, who are all in the line for that award for 15's Men's Player of the Year award. But Tuomas du Toit, who's a Springbok prop, has backed one person. Let's find out who he is.
Yeah, listen, Ox is a special person and he's an incredible rugby player, and I'm very grateful that there's some recognition that's going his way. I think everyone understands the type of player that he is and understands how well he does play the game. But to get this type of recognition is special, and I'm very grateful for him, very glad for him. And yeah, if I could have it my way, I would obviously have him win it.
If it's him, I mean, you won't need to have any salad at the celebration party, eh? What's it?
No
Salads
scrum
don't wear scrums.
They don't wear scrums.
Yeah.
Only cake does. But Stephen, I don't think that's what's on the Boks' mind right now. They have a grudge match on Saturday against Ireland. We know what happened the last time we met them here at home. 25-24, so close right there at the end of the game. And we are looking at the Toy, who's also very clear going into this game, saying this clash is going to hurt.
I think there's a couple of things that would be very similar to what we faced against France and Italy, both being unbelievably physical sides. The one thing that might be a little bit different is a little bit more of a structured game. They really understand their game very well. They understand it a couple of phases ahead. They know who they want to target, so it's going to be a little bit different, but it doesn't really change anything for us. We do our homework as best we can and we adapt on the day.
Back home, there was T20 action at Wanderers Stadium today. Dragons ending their campaign on a high note, securing a 181-1 super over win, this against the DP World Lions at home. Meanwhile, there's a man from Langa. His name is Temba, and he came to score because he is in the top 5 for the first time as far as cricketers are concerned on the world rankings. Sitting right there at the top is Joe Root. In tennis, a Swiss tennis icon Roger Federer has been inducted into the class of 2026, this at the International Tennis Hall of Fame. The ceremony is set to take place next year in August. Finally, on the golf course, 3-time DP World Tour winner Victor Perez is joining Live Golf for the 2026 season after leaving the PGA Tour. The 33-year-old was at risk of losing his PGA card. He has now pulled out of the final FedEx 4 event before making the switch. Tato Moloto, Eyewitness News Sport.
Since December 2024, South Africa has proudly led the G20, guided by a powerful theme: solidarity, equality, and sustainability. From the heart of Africa, we're bringing fresh voices and bold ideas, united by a commitment to build a future where no one is left behind, where economies grow fairly, and where our planet's health guides every decision. South Africa's G20 Presidency 2025, together shaping tomorrow. This message is brought to you by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation.
Take your leadership to the next level. Wits Business School, in partnership with France's top-ranked Kedge Business School, is launching the Wits Kedge MBA in Global Executive Leadership, a powerful new program designed for senior leaders ready to think globally and lead with impact. Join the online information session on the 20th of November at 5:30 p.m. to discover how this world-class MBA can transform your career. Register now at wbs.ac.za. That's wbs.ac.za. The Wits Cage MBA in Global Executive Leadership, shaping global leaders for a changing world.
My boy, a father now. Another generation on this farm. Maybe we should expand.
We could leverage the farm at a residential estate. It'll pay itself off easily, so they'll be cared for even when you're gone. If it's on your mind, it's on ours. Partner with a wealth banker who will connect you to structured lending solutions for wealth that supports generations to come. See money differently. Nedbank Private Wealth. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
702. Stephen is on X.
At Stephen Grootes.
14 minutes now to 7. Well, one of the key conversations at the B20 around the energy transition for us, with our minerals endowment, you want to make sure the mining industry is able to make the most of the demand for some of the minerals that really are crucial to all of this. Mzile Mtinjana is the CEO at the at the Minerals Council South Africa. Mzile, good evening. I imagine you're probably still in Sandton when we talk to you tonight. Our region has a huge endowment of minerals the world needs for this energy transition. How can we make sure that we make the most of it?
Good evening, Stephen. Thank you for having me. And that's actually been the reverberating question, since Monday with some of the side events of the B20 in terms of how South Africa, how the continent leverages its mineral resources at a time of significant demand, which I think is foreseen to last for quite a long time. And, some of the responses obviously refer first and foremost to the issue of policy. Now, from a country perspective in South Africa, you'll know we've been quite active with the MRD bill. And what I can say for now is that it's really been encouraging the conversations we've been having with the DMPR in terms of what will finally be, I think, an investor-friendly policy. And the same applies to the rest of the continent. There's also been a suggestion of potentially harmonizing, policy across, and let's speak of the SADC region across the different countries. But it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult. And then the other issue that I think is important in terms of being able to leverage the minerals is the issue of infrastructure development and skills. And when it comes to infrastructure, it really starts with electricity. And obviously that then will take you into the conversation about beneficiation, but also logistics. Telecoms is becoming a big feature in terms of infrastructure requirements, roads, and this is all to be able to, produce minerals, beneficiate them, get them to market. And this is how we'll begin to see the continent of South Africa benefiting significantly from these minerals.
It's interesting. I mean, there was, I forget which country it was. We were discussing it on the show last night. I mean, there's one country that's actually removing VAT from mining exploration, from mining costs, simply to make the most of it. Other people in other parts of Africa are doing some very interesting things with policy. There may be space here for some real changes, or maybe even a little bit of, as dangerous as it sounds, experimentation to see what works, to see what really drives the most investment.
And that's a theme that's also been coming through in terms of just some of the, I don't like using the word radical being in South Africa, but there's some radical thinking in terms of incentivizing exploration. And I think the point was made by Duncan on Tuesday when we were speaking at a G20 side event on critical minerals, that all mining begins with exploration, and all future growth of mining, requires exploration. And it's a high risk element in the value chain, which needs as much help as possible and as much help as any other new venture would get. So, and this is part of the conversations that we're having. But I think it's encouraging, though, to see that government has really gotten off the starting blocks in terms of establishing an exploration fund. We've seen Anglo, committing an additional 600 million rand. And we want to see more of these funds, both across government and private sector, because they can be very complementary to one another.
Some of the stuff, you mentioned roads and electricity, the cadastral system has been a big issue. Some of it is just getting the basics right. There are some signs. We've had a bit of good news this week, obviously, in the last 10 days, in terms of government finances, upgrade, things like that. Some of that is just improving the basics, Transnet. still, I'm afraid to say, quite a lot of work to be done. I wonder how delegates from other countries at the B20 are sort of seeing South Africa right now. I mean, the world is looking for places where life is improving, where things are getting better. And maybe we fit that bill a little bit.
I think it's often been said that as South Africans we're quite harsh on ourselves because I think other people who come into the country are very positive. I think, the signals coming out of the removal from the grey listing, the strengthening of the rand, it's a double-edged sword when you're in mining, and then the upgrade. So there's some positive signs, and I think this is going to begin to shift sentiment. And we now need to lean on that and leverage and begin to build a confidence in terms of, that we're on the right direction and we need to build momentum on the areas where we're seeing success. And that will begin to invite investment into the country. I think one point I want to mention, though, is that I think what I've been seeing since Monday and also with a lot of other of these mining conferences that I tend to attend, the conversation is becoming repetitive in terms of critical minerals and leveraging and what is required. It's policy certainty, security of tenure, financing has been coming up quite a bit, innovation and skills, and then infrastructure. But I think all of that is fine, and we know what is required. But one conversation that I'm liking that is also beginning to make its appearance is around the need for leadership, particularly when it comes to, we speak of PPPs. There's a thesis that somebody shared with me of, there's a need for public-public partnership in terms of how governments work with each other, both within country and between across boundaries. Private partnerships in terms of how within business we also just improve how we work together. And then out of that, you then get a more expanded PPP. And I think that leadership alignment and shared vision will then make all of these things happen because we've been talking about these things for a long time. But it really just requires the leadership to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it takes leadership. It also, there's also a concern, I think, sometimes that government wants certain things to happen, and so it'll use policy to do that, and decarbonisation or using renewables is one of them, and sometimes that can go a little far.
Yeah, and this is where I think more conversation between business and government is required. Because, the issue of coal, and one of the key outcomes from the B20 in terms of recommendations to government. And I was sitting in on the Energy Mix and Just Transition Task Force, is that I think we have to meet countries from where they are. And for South Africa continuing to be a coal-dominant country, but we've seen significant investment in renewables. We've got to use that energy mix to get us to a point where we're then able to transition into much higher proportion of renewables. But we cannot instantly dismiss coal and think that we can quickly embark on a renewable energy grid.
Mzila Mthenjane, good to talk to you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the time. CEO at the SA Minerals Council.
702. Stephen is on the Money Show.
6 to 8 p.m.
Well, higher inflation figures today than we've seen for quite some time. CPI rising to 3.6% in October. I say high for quite some time, but if you consider how low inflation is now compared to how high it's been in the past, in some ways, it's relatively low. Koketso Mano is a senior economist at FNB. Koketso, good evening. Really appreciate the time on the Money Show. Thank you. How important is food price inflation to all of this? I mean, food inflation seems to be dipping.
Definitely, and that's, the main surprise for many of us and why we expected slightly higher inflation, and we were surprised at the downside, which is a good thing by food and non-alcoholic beverages. Seemingly, there's still a little bit of deflationary pressure there if you look at the month-on-month changes, and primarily from your fresh produce, specifically vegetables here. So it wasn't necessarily broad-based, but it's good to see that, especially potatoes, those prices are continuing to contract.
We finally had formal confirmation from the finance minister last week. The inflation target for the Monetary Policy Committee is 3%. There is that one percentage point sort of band of tolerance, which is a nice way, I suppose, of saying that our inflation target is actually 2 to 4%.
Yes.
What do you think happens? I mean, the Reserve Bank very keen on anchoring inflation expectations.
Correct. So, it is so good that inflation, even with this uplift in October, still remains within this tolerance band of 2 to 4%. So we don't really think inflation as a starting point for the MPC's forecast is going to be an issue. In fact, when you saw the forecast from the September meeting, they see inflation anchored at that 3% over the medium term or over the policy horizon, right? The issue, as you correctly note, is inflation expectations. So when you look at the broad spectrum of wage negotiations, those are not anchored at 3%. You still see those at 5%, 6%, and those are multi-year wage negotiations. So there's still a process here to be had in anchoring everyone's mind around 3%, whether you're running a business, whether you are a trade union, and that's going to take a bit of time. So we always thought that the MPC may have to keep interest rates, or monetary policy rather, restrictive in order to guide these inflation expectations lower. There has been a stream of really positive news. If you think about risk associated with investing in South Africa, and maybe the cost of attracting capital is not so high. So maybe there is an opportunity to cut interest rates a little bit earlier than what we anticipated, but we don't think the cutting cycle will be very steep.
I mean, the longer term sort of inflation case is fascinating. We expect it's a La Nina year in the north of the country. That means more rain. That means probably cheaper maize. That means cheaper food generally. Meat prices were high because of the outbreak, the foot and mouth outbreak in Gauteng. They'll come down. Shein and Timu are probably going to continue to make clothing prices cheaper. I mean, the timing from that point of view couldn't be better.
Precisely. But, what we note is that exact segregation between goods inflation and services inflation, right? Goods inflation is probably going to continue surprising us to the downside. You've mentioned a few things here, included there would be the rand. You've rightfully connected a lot of these import price decelerations to, imports from the East. So that's still going to be very good news for us in the medium term. What we worry about is services inflation. And if you looked at the data this morning, you would have seen that also services inflation continues to rise. So when we think about services inflation, that is the core of core, right? The underlying demand-driven price pressures. And we worry that there's still a little bit of normalization taking place there. If you think about insurance, medical insurances, they've put out their increases for next year, and those are still well above, 3%. Never mind, the 3% target. So I think the MPC being cognizant of, what they can really drive or really control through monetary policy, which is core inflation, they may still be worried about services. But you're so right that this number at 3.6% and maybe still numbers around 3.4% next year will still have, create the space for interest rate or monetary policy easing.
Koketso Mano, thank you. Really appreciate it. Senior economist at FNB.
Business Outsurance are experts in business insurance for general practitioners, dentists, surgeons, and other medical specialists. Kuveni.
It's so nice to know the business risk is taken care of by Business Outsurance. The call center is just a dream to deal with. Very seamless, easy experience, and it just feels like the people we're talking to on the other line understand our needs.
Switch to Business Outsurance and you could get a massive 20% discount on your business insurance premium. Visit outsurance.co.za. Switch and save today. Licensed insurer and FSP. TCs and information online.
To sell or not to sell? That is the question. Whether selling a car, bike, boat or bakkie, We Buy Cars offers instant payment and a stress-free experience. Simply complete the form on webuycars.co.za for the best offer. Trading in or shopping for your next ride? Explore 12,000 plus vehicles online or visit We Buy Cars in store. Whether buying or selling, head to We Buy Cars today.
What do partners of the Gates Foundation do when facing the world's toughest challenges? They keep going. From discovering a plastic drape that helps detect excessive postpartum bleeding faster, to developing better bed nets to kill malaria-carrying mosquitoes, to researching an RSV vaccine that could save hundreds of thousands of children. For every problem, there are people who prove that progress is possible. The Gates Foundation, partners of human potential. Learn more at gatesfoundation.org/keep going.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by Absa CIB.
ABSA is a registered FSP.
You've heard some great resignation stories tonight. In a moment, why you should be better than that. It's 7 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Maki Malapo. Transport Minister Barbara Creecy says South Africa's aviation sector is fully equipped and prepared to welcome international visitors attending the G20 Leaders Summit this weekend. The OR Tambo International Airport, Waterkloof Air Force Base and Lanseria Airport will serve as entry points for the heads of state who are expected to begin arriving tomorrow. Creecy shared the details during a State of Readiness media briefing in Ekurhuleni earlier today. She says the country's ports of entry have met all security and safety requirements needed to manage the influx of international delegates.
On the 25th of October this year, we had our first dry run, which demonstrated the readiness of all the ports of entry, and it set a benchmark for a high standard of operational excellence for this important Leaders Summit.
In the same breath, former Finance Minister Trevor Manuel says a lack of cooperation between nations will only stagger progress for a shared global vision on growth and development. Manuel made the comments while addressing delegates at the B20 summit currently underway at the Sandton Convention Centre. This is the business leg of the G20 under South Africa's presidency, which comes to an end this week. Global cooperation is among themes on the table, with some global leaders pushing for multilateralism in the face of strong skepticism by U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump's return to the White House and his approach to foreign policy have shifted traditional multilateralism. Manuel says fragmentation has no place in the global order.
It's about respect between nations and developing systems that advance people. And that now is very broken, and that's what we need to understand in order to engage with it going forward. The question is not that might is right, but how nation states accommodate each other in order to advance the betterment of everybody. That's a big challenge. And if you don't have that, you don't have the predictability that allows for decision making anywhere, whether in business or government. That's a big challenge that confronts us now.
Controversial businessman Brown Mokgotsi has told the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry he narrowly escaped an alleged assassination attempt by sheer luck. Last month, Mokgotsi allegedly came under fire from gunmen travelling in a white bakkie on the N3 highway near Vosloorus on the East Rand. Several bullets penetrated the vehicle Mokgotsi was travelling in, raising questions about how he escaped unscathed. Mokgotsi has shared details before the inquiry this afternoon about the alleged attempt on his life.
Those people followed me for so long. I thought they could not find me. When they saw my car, they fired a shot. I managed to drive because they were driving on a speed 10 left on that particular street. Fortunately, they passed to go and make a U-turn. That's when I ran for my life.
He says he was concerned when rumours surfaced that the incident was staged.
But before I could even give the statement, they were saying, hey, this may be a staged assassination, and that's what made me very worried.
For live updates on the Commission, visit ewn.co.za or watch live proceedings on our YouTube channel. In the Western Cape High Court, one of the 14 co-accused in the high-profile trial of alleged underworld gang boss Nafiz Modak has taken issue with the food being served to prisoners at the Western Cape High Court. The trial was delayed yet again today after proceedings were postponed due to accused number 4, Tofik Brown, being ill. Brown, who's allegedly the leader of a gang operating in Woodstock, claims food served to him in the holding cells at court caused the illness. Carla Peterson has more.
Defense attorney Inga Jansen today told the court her client, accused number 4 Tofik Brown, had taken ill after eating food served to prisoners in the court's holding cells. Jansen's request for a postponement was granted after she told the court Brown needed urgent medical attention. It's the state's case. Brown used the terrible Westsiders gang in Woodstock to perform murders on behalf of Modak. State prosecutor Greg Wolmerans told the court Brown needed to be present while Modak is being cross-examined.
Well, unfortunately, the cross-examination of Mr. Modak was in his position in the witness box. Does bring in not only accused number 4 but accused number 5 as well.
The matter is set to proceed tomorrow. Carlo Peterson, Eyewitness News.
And retail sales have posted an improvement after months of mixed data, rising to 3.1% year-on-year in September. This after it rose by a revised 2.2% in August. Stats SA says all 7 retail groups recorded a stronger month. General dealers, retailers in textiles, clothing, footwear and leather goods, as well as retailers in household furniture, drove most of momentum. The agency released the latest data on retail trade sales today. Deputy Director for Distributive Trade Statistics at Stats SA, Raquel Flores.
General dealers, which include supermarkets, increased by 1.9% year-on-year. Textiles and clothing rose by 4.4%. Together, the two groups added 1.6 percentage points to overall growth. On a month-to-month basis, seasonally adjusted retail trade sales was flat in September 2025 compared with August 2025.
Gold's trading at $4,069.77 an ounce. The rand's at 17.22 to the dollar, at 22.52 to the pound, at 19.87 to the euro. Brent crude oil is at $63.41 a barrel.
In Sharon Lee, we still have bumper-to-bumper traffic on Malibongwe Drive. This is between Belize and the N1, while in Cape Town, there's those delays on the M3 southbound between UCT and Clipper Road. And there's also bumper-to-bumper traffic still on the N1 outbound between Century City and Belleville.
Look at your weather. Partly cloudy Thursday in store for Gauteng with afternoon thunder showers expected tomorrow. Joburg will drop to overnight lows of 13 degrees and peak at highs of 23. Pretoria is at 14 and 25. Vereeniging is at 13, also reaching highs of 25 degrees. It's set to be a fine and windy day for the mother city tomorrow with strong southeasterly winds at a low of 18 and a high of 27 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News this hour. Transport Minister Barbara Creasy says South Africa's aviation sector is fully equipped and prepared to welcome international visitors attending the G20 Leaders Summit this weekend.
EWN, in touch, in tune, and independent. For the latest, visit ewn.co.za or download the EWN app.
And now, The Money Show
with Stephen Grootes on 702.
Let's walk the talk.
The Money Show with Stephen Grootes is brought to you by ABSA CIB, unlocking growth potential in over 125 black-owned SMEs through the Heineken Beverages Ukukula Fund. ABSA is a registered FSB. 7 minutes after 7 the time. Good to have you along with us on The Money Show tonight. Plenty to come. We'll talk about how you resign, well, I've been looking for the right word, elegantly, properly, correctly, morally. Gracefully is a good word. There are other words. We've had some pretty wonderful resignation stories. Still getting over the guy who sort of changed all the numbers in the fleet database so that he would keep the customers. Anyway, some very interesting stories around resignations. We'll hear from your consumer ninja, Wendy Nola, with all of the talk about electric cars. And I find them really interesting. I'm kind of keen to have one, but I don't at the moment. And I'm not sort of looking to make a change. But what happens if there's a fundamental problem? Electric cars have fewer parts. The battery cells are not easy things to move around. Wendy Nola's got a very interesting story. And then Barry Van Zyl is a drummer. He's many things, but one of the things he is a drummer. Started drumming as a youngster, he was 10. Went on the global stage, went touring with Johnny Clegg, played with an incredible number of people, and ended up running the global MBA lead at Henley Business School, from drumming to business academia. It's a fascinating story. He's your shapeshifter this evening. Looking forward to that.
The Money Show.
Business Unusual.
Well, the question tonight in Business Unusual, how do you resign elegantly? We've sort of heard how not to do it. Advita Naidu is Africa MD at Jack Hammer Global. Advita, you sort of sparked a conversation. A lot of people are quite keen when they resign, or maybe they've been forced out, to go in a sort of blaze of glory. I know you're sensible and rational, and you're going to advise us not to do it.
It's amazing, though, how many sensible and rational people can let emotions take over them at this one critical moment, though, isn't it? But I think how you leave is as important as how you performed when you were with the company and as where you're going next. It can be a bit of an inflection point, a defining point in your professional narrative, because the way you do it will say whether you have the emotional intelligence and the good reputation and maturity. But it is kind of like hygiene factor. When you do it well, it's normal, and when you do it badly, it's noticed.
I mean, I have seen some people leave a company with real class, and that left a real impression. Does how you leave almost as big as an impression as how you were at a company?
I think it does, and I think when people do it in a way that's clear, they have a calm and an intentional conversation about their decision, and importantly about the fact that they're not going to be open to a counter offer. It doesn't open up any messiness. They do it with a proper handover plan, and they promise that they're still going to remain engaged throughout their notice period, and then they have a bit of a closure. They end with gratitude and respect regardless of their circumstances. I think it lands pretty well because sadly, ultimately, people will remember the end a bit more vividly than the middle, and so it then just becomes part of your legacy. So it is incumbent upon you to do it well and do it properly.
Is it more important to do it well than it used to be because of our old friend social media?
Social media. Yes, I think, you consider that we live in this hyper-connected world. So the rules are very different than they were in the past. Before, if you left a job badly, maybe 3 people would know about it. And today it can be 300 very quickly. But it's... when you think about the hyper-connectedness, when you use social media, I think, there are people who will go onto LinkedIn and see that there's a mutual connection. A hiring manager will scan an online footprint and pick up a phone with a quick, how did this person leave? You worked with him or her, like what happened there? And these conversations are hugely influential. And other than resigning well and performing well, there's nothing that you can do to control for them because they're informal, they're off the record, they can be quite candid. And so anyone who's witnessed a poor exit, and this isn't just colleagues, right? It's not colleagues, it's clients, it's suppliers. They could end up telling a story of that moment where you may not have shown up at your absolute best.
Yes, no, I mean, I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the other things that's changed, not just social media, Advita, obviously, is the exit interview. And exit interviews, I think, are very complex. In fact, we got a great voice note on 072 702 1702 about them.
Hello, Stephen. This is Lorraine from Cape Town. Anyway, I'm no longer in corporate, but I don't do exit interviews. I just refuse. It's just, for me, it's just a waste of my time because I've moved on, and whatever that bothered me, I would have actually addressed prior for me moving on. So once I do resign, I don't do exit interviews. It's just really total waste of time. What is that is that going to change for me or for whoever that is going to be left behind? We can have an informal chat after I've resigned with whoever, but don't give me the exit interview.
It's an interesting point, Advita. I mean, if I'm leaving, why would you care what I think?
So a couple of things. I mean, I suppose it depends on why the person's leaving, and I think that's important. If there was a push factor out of the company, I think it's probably important for the people who are left behind, or if you plan to return at some point, that you can give some feedback if you're comfortable to do so. But this is not supposed to be a therapy couch. It's not at the time to go and verbally detonate and talk about all the ways in which you were mistreated or unheard. But if there is something constructive that you can share about process and workflow and cultural observations, and it still keeps that cap of professionalism on you, I think that's important. If it's emotional or personal, absolutely do not do it. And then if you think about if there's a pull factor for somebody outside of the organization, it's not that, I'm happy to be leaving where I currently am. It's just that there's a better opportunity for me elsewhere. That's also important for a company to know, especially a manager that you're leaving behind if there are no hard feelings.
So I get all of that, and it sounds a little HR because I don't mean that in a bad way. AI is coming for you. But what I think that one of the reasons people leave a place is because they don't get on with their boss. And how do you say that? Because that boss might be responsible for 5 people leaving in a month, but no one's going to say it unless they can be honest. So, if they took your advice, which I completely respect, Advita, but they probably wouldn't say it. And so then for HR and for the company, an exit interview is kind of useless. It doesn't fulfill its purpose. And isn't that quite complicated? I mean, I think if you're not honest, then what?
Absolutely. But again, I think if you can make your point in a way that is divorced from the emotion and not have it be career damaging and not resign in a fit of emotion, where you've reached the point and you've reached it from a fairly intellectual perspective, and you can actually feel comfortable to give the feedback either to HR or in an ideal world with other colleagues or somebody who the manager reports to, I think that is quite important. And again, if there's a pattern, if an HR department is doing its job in the way it should be doing it, then they will start to notice that and they will act on that. Unfortunately, it's too late for the person who's leaving, but it could help to improve culture in the longer term. But unfortunately, there are also managers and leaders who receive resignations poorly. So considering there's an information and power asymmetry in this case, with you being the person resigning, it's still incumbent upon you to make sure you do it in a way that there's no blowback on you.
I mean, it's interesting that because I think some people might feel the only time they can be honest about the company is just after they've resigned.
That is sad but true, but I think there's still a way to reinforce your integrity and go with grace and make sure that it strengthens your professional network in the longer term. So if you can give that feedback in a matter-of-fact, data-driven way and, again, divorce yourself from the emotion, that's the way to do it.
Advita Naidu, it's fascinating. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Africa MD at Jack Hammer Global. Such an interesting point she made there. And I think it's worth echoing about how people will remember the end perhaps more strongly than the middle of your time there. If you leave well, people are going to remember that. If you leave badly, well, they're going to remember that too. And it might overshadow all of the work that you've done. You work at a company for 5-10 years. Things go badly for a year and you leave then. That's not really how you want to be. How you want it to be remembered. You want it to be remembered in quite a positive way. I thought that was a very interesting conversation.
Durbanville Hills pairs perfectly with sunsets, your favorite playlist, and your favorite people. Durbanville Hills pairs really well with your December Friendsmas party. It pairs perfectly with every story. And right now, when you buy any 2 bottles of Durbanville Hills from participating retailers, you could win a 5,000 Rand voucher. Durbanville Hills pairs perfectly with every story. Not for persons under the age of 18. T's and C's apply.
South Africa is taking its place on the world stage at the B20 and G20 Summits 2025. Telkom is proud to stand with the nation, building a digital future that reaches every community. Through reliable fiber, mobile and cloud networks, Telkom is connecting families, small businesses and young people to new opportunities. They're helping drive digital public infrastructure so services are easier to access for all. Telkom, the digital backbone of South Africa's future.
Calling all wedding planners and venues, restaurants, conference centers, and hotels. Do you need tables and chairs? Home in One has it all. Do you need cutlery, crockery, table linen, and restaurant equipment? Home in One has it all. Do you need tents, gazebos, or umbrellas? Home in One has it all. Affordable prices, the latest trends, with 2 branches in Pretoria and Johannesburg. Shop online at homein1.co.za because we're your number one choice. Home in One has it all.
Standard Bank and 702 have joined forces to bring you China Unlocked.
So obviously rooibos is very unique to South Africa, that only grows in South Africa. So it's a real South African treasure that we can share with the rest of the world. And obviously it's a very different tea to the teas that the Chinese are used to. What's interesting now is that the Chinese consumers has given rooibos their own name, and they call it Bosha Cha, which means basically the doctor's tea, which we are very happy with because it's so full of health properties. So that definitely helps the sale and the trust in the product.
Don't miss China Unlocked on 702 Drive with John Perlman. Tuesdays on 702. Brought to you by Standard Bank Business and Commercial, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. The Money Show.
Consumer Ninja
A lot of talk again about Chinese cars and their entry to the markets this week. You heard the CEO of We Buy Cars earlier in the week talking about the impact new Chinese cars have had on them. One of the big questions about it is around spares. So when you've got new cars coming in, new models, companies you haven't worked with before, they don't always have the dealer network around the country, and particularly with electric cars. Well, Wendy Nola, your consumer ninja, has been looking at this particular issue. Wendy, good evening. There's a particular thing that's happened, and I mean, the change we're seeing in the market is huge.
It is huge, and I mean, still the EV market is a tiny percentage of overall market, but it has been growing. It's difficult to know the figures, though, because the Chinese manufacturer BYD doesn't report its sales to industry body NAMSA. But without them in 2024, there were 3,251 units sold in the last 5 years, I should clarify, of which 1,257 were sold last year, 2024. But the question that came to mind with this case study that I dealt with, and it's a legacy EV, it's a BMW electric vehicle in the case study, but is it a reasonable expectation that manufacturers in South Africa keep battery components, particular, in stock to spare customers a long wait for replacement battery parts should their cars have an issue? And in this case study, Jonathan Liebenberger of Pretoria, he firmly believes so. After his experience, he is questioning BMW's support of its EV car park in South Africa, which he says is around 2,000. So his BMW i4 M50 had a battery failure on the 17th of September, which is where the story starts.
Okay, so when did he buy it? I mean, how old is the car?
It's newish. He bought it new last January. The replacement battery cell will only be fitted and the car returned to him on the 18th of December. So in his case, that's a 3-month process. Sure. Yeah, exactly. And he's saying they should have a couple of hundred of these battery cells in their warehouse. But no, they have none, he told me. He does concede on the upside that the service that he's received from the BMW dealership in Menlyn has been really good. But yeah, 3-month wait is a long time.
I mean, was there? Many of us and many families just come to a halt when that happens. Was he offered a courtesy car?
Yes, according to BMW South Africa, he was. So they did at least tick that box. But again, it comes down to a 3-month wait.
And what does he want to happen? I mean, this is such an interesting question because I think so many people might, and particularly with electric cars, fewer parts, but if something happens to them, much harder to fix.
Yeah. So in my website form, I always ask people, what would you consider to be a reasonable resolution of this situation? And he gave 3 options. He said, I don't want a car that takes 3 months to repair while under motor plan, so I want a full refund. He thinks that's fair. Or he said they can replace my car with a working one. That makes it 1.5 months to rectify rather than 3. He says, or make a public statement declaring their plan to improve customer service by having 5 battery packs, 100 battery modules, and 1,000 battery cells in their spares warehouse. He did say there was some method to that calculation. But yeah, quite a big ask, all 3 of them.
Yeah, interesting though. I mean, he's kind of putting BMW on terms, and I'm guessing here, Wendy, but I suspect that the answer was no.
0 out of 3, yeah. Here's what BMW did say. They said that part of the reason, doesn't answer the question of have them in stock, but for safety reasons, all EV manufacturers have to send battery cells and modules for safety reasons by sea freight. So there's none of this, just put it on a plane and get it over with. Depending on where the battery cells are manufactured, said BMW South Africa, i.e. Europe versus China, there's a 12 to 16 week lead time from any of our BMW Group competence centres to manage the global supply of battery cells and modules. Replacements are managed centrally by BMW AG, and sourcing replacements for just-in-time delivery ensures that we are better able to control and guarantee the the quality of the battery post-repair. And they then just laid out Liebenberg's car's whole process. The parts arriving at the port on the 23rd of November. It's just a few days from now. Then it'll go to the parts warehouse, first week of December. Estimated completion 18th of December, as you said. And this is the crux, I think, of their response, Stephen. Given the small number of battery module and cell replacements that we've performed in this market since 2015 and the components' relative shelf life, it would not be viable to keep stock in hand. So people aren't wanting old batteries, and there's not a lot of demand for them because mostly these cars operate, their batteries don't have issues. So, this Julian was particularly unlucky, but yeah, I see his side. 3 months, I wouldn't have been happy with that either.
No, and also it's not what you expect, especially from a quality brand.
Mm.
You don't expect that. Other EV brands, I mean, Volvo plays in the space.
Yes.
There are plenty of other people.
Sure.
BYD, I think, is going to come in a big way.
Yes.
Do we know anything about their replacement battery components?
I did attempt to find out for reasons of comparison. So Volvo's, as you say, EX30 was among the best-selling EVs last year. We've got to say among because on paper it is, but then we don't have BYD figures, which they're a big player with their Atto 3 and the more affordable Dolphin becoming very popular from last year. So I asked Volvo. They said, unfortunately, they're going to need more time to come up with an answer. So it's a to be continued.
That means we don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that was something you need deep research on. The question I asked was, do you have stock and how long is your typical repair, basically? So BYD said that while it did have a local parts warehouse in Joburg, because high voltage battery components are highly specialized, not every module is stocked locally at all times, which is why lead times can vary. Blade batteries, so that's the main battery powering the car, not the auxiliary one that does, the windscreen wipers and radios and things. They require long lead times, as BMW said, because they have to be sea freighted. But yes, we have batteries in stock for our BYD models at our Joburg warehouse. And we plan, according to sales records, car park requirements, and planned for sea freight delivery of the blade batteries. So if they have in stock, the replacement process takes 5 to 7 days. If not, they're not saying how long that will take, but I'm guessing it's also going to be a long time. So that's just something to bear in mind with these cars. That in the, I think it is certainly in BMW's case, unlikely event of something going wrong, you are going to have a lengthy wait.
Yeah.
And I think as long as they give you alternative transport, it might not be exactly what you had, but at least that's something goes towards keeping you mobile, right? Not just
No, absolutely. And often for a lot of people, your business, your entire income rests on
right,
that.
exactly.
Wendy Nola, thank you so much. Your Consumer Ninja on The Money Show.
Coming up,
The Aubrey Masango Show
on 702
and Cape Talk.
Wasanga Mahana in for Aubrey, I think probably for the rest of the week. Wasanga, how's it going?
Very good. I think the nerves have worn off. I didn't.
So I certainly didn't hear any nerves at all. What's coming up tonight?
It's good to hear. We are going to be kicking off with financial matters, staying consistent and avoiding holiday money traps. Those.
Oh, jeez. The first thing is if you're going on a long distance trip, pack your putt course first. Don't stop and buy. Don't do any of that. Don't let the kids out of the car apart from the toilet. Just take it home.
Oh, Stephen, always with the wisdom. And then I just want to ask a question. I don't know. Do you have a favorite Western movie or song?
Oh, a favorite Western, as in cowboys and all the rest.
Clint Eastwood and the stuff.
Clint Eastwood. I don't know. There was a movie from the 90s called Maverick, which was quite fun. Who was in it, man? He had that issue with the cop in the end. Mel Gibson was in it.
Amazing.
Mel Gibson, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, no. But we won't be talking about that. We'll be talking about the weird and wonderful world of horses.
Oh, wow.
Right? Nice
Okay.
one. We're expecting that. And then talking about changing your mindset in the third hour of the show. And we're talking about defeating imposter syndrome, ironically. I think my producer is playing around with me there. But it's a nice one. I don't know if you suffer from those kind of things, Stephen. Someone as experienced as you.
The thing about imposter syndrome, I think, for me, is that it is really about building your own confidence. And I think imposter syndrome is just another name for that. Fake it till you make it is what people have been doing forever. I think everybody, and it works.
Yeah, you just wait for that time when they'll figure it out. But yeah, that's the show this evening.
Thank you very much indeed. Looking forward to it. And of course, you'll hear that from 8 to midnight tonight. Wasanga Mahana in for Aubrey Masango. Well, plenty to come in the next little while. We'll be speaking to Barry van Sale. He is a drummer And there are very few drummers and musicians who you think will end up running an MBA program, but that's what he's doing. I'll also ask him about the sort of currency of an MBA. Is it still as important? Is it still as worth as much as it used to be? But Barry van Zyl, the global ABM program lead at the ND Business School, looking forward to that conversation. First, though, just gone 7:30. Time for the latest Eyewitness News. Marky, good evening. The latest on inflation.
That's right, Stephen. Good evening. Stats SA says annual inflation for food and non-alcoholic beverages weakened substantially to 3.9% in October from 4.5% in September. Several categories saw a slowdown, including vegetables, fruits and nuts, cold and hot beverages, sugar, desserts and meat. Despite the slowdown, food and non-alcoholic beverages were the main contributors to the marginal uptick in the October inflation reading. Chief Director for Price Statistics at Stats SA, Patrick Kelly, says meat inflation retreated from its highest level in almost 8 years.
Despite the lower reading, several meat products remain in double-digit territory, including stewing beef at 30.9%, beef steak up 27.9%, and beef mince higher by 27.1%. It's not all bad news on the meat front, however. Corned meat, fresh, whole chicken and bacon are cheaper than a year ago.
He says there are other items in the basket still costing consumers more than they did a year ago.
Categories that recorded accelerated price growth include cereal products, fish and other seafood, oils and fats, milk, other dairy products and eggs, and the group Other Food.
Minister Sinzim Kunu's Chief of Staff, Cedric Nkabinde, has justified referring MP Fadil Adams' complaint about National Commissioner Fani Masemola for criminal investigation. Nkabinde says this was because Adams had lost confidence in the country's top cop. Nkabinde says he referred Adams' complaint to the Investigating Directorate Against Corruption because it was a service delivery complaint despite receiving hundreds of complaints. Adams, the leader of the National Coloured Congress Party, laid the complaint against General Masemola, accusing him of fraud and nepotism and running a patronage network within the police force. Nkabinde was questioned before the ad hoc committee investigating police corruption on why he felt it was appropriate to refer the Adams complaint to IDAC, and this is what he had to say.
This complaint itself, it's showing that a complainant has lost confidence in the National Commissioner, if you read the content of the email. So definitely, as he is requesting an independent body, the independent body relevant will be IDAC, because now National Commissioner is the number one cop of the country.
As Cape Town deals with daily gun violence, Delft is seeing some successes in removing illegal firearms off the streets. Following a meeting with members of the Western Cape Government and the City of Cape Town's Law Enforcement Advancement Plan and the SAPS in Delft, Premier Alan Winde says the area has seen some significant progress. 130 LEAP officers work closely with police in the community that's had some of the worst crime stats in recent times. Winde, however, says they're seeing some changes.
The interesting data point from LEAP is that they are now the number one area on the firearms taken off the streets. Out of the circulation system, of course, is really to be recognized.
And in the UK, the government has today announced plans to ban the resale of tickets for concerts, sports matches and other events above their original price, targeting touts who profit from inflated prices. Resale platforms and ticket touts often list tickets at a huge markup on their face value price, sparking outrage from the music industry and fans alike. The issue was highlighted by widespread public anger over the exorbitant cost of some tickets to see the British leg of Britpop band Oasis's reunion tour this year. Under the government's plans, resale platforms will face capped service fees and individuals will be banned from reselling more tickets than they were entitled to buy in the initial sale. British music stars including Coldplay, Dua Lipa, Radiohead, Sam Fender and Iron Maiden last week signed a joint statement urging swift legislation to cap resale prices. Resale platforms, however, have pushed back on the government's plans. A look at your weather. A partly cloudy Thursday in store for Gauteng tomorrow, with afternoon thunder showers expected. Temperatures will drop to alternating overnight lows of 13 and 14 degrees and peak at highs between 23 and 25 degrees. Cape Town said to be fine and windy with strong southeasterly winds at a low of 18 and a high of 27 degrees. The top story in Eyewitness News: Stats SA says annual inflation for food and non-alcoholic beverages weakened substantially to 3.9% in October from 4.5% in September.
At Auto & General, we understand your business is built on more than just vehicles. It's your stock, tools and equipment, and the premises where you work. Auto & General Business Insurance is designed for businesses like yours, protecting your assets against fire, theft, storms, and other unexpected events. To protect your livelihood, visit autogen.co.za and get an obligation-free business insurance quote. Auto & General, never not there. Auto & General is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Dreaming of a tropical escape? World Leisure Holidays has your ticket to paradise with exclusive getaways to the Indian Ocean Islands. From the beaches of Mauritius and the Maldives to the charm of Madagascar, Seychelles, Zanzibar and more, your dream destination awaits. Take advantage of early bird specials and pay stay offers. Call 011-285-2500 and mention 702 for a mystery discount. Or follow us on social media or contact your nearest travel professional. Start planning your escape today. T's and C's apply.
So Taryn, you've just graduated cum laude, but nothing says you're a genius quite like selling your car to We Buy Cars.
Absolutely. My car was an 18th birthday present and it's time to move on to something a bit more mature.
So where did you hear about We Buy Cars?
All of my friends are using We Buy Cars. I would have had legit FOMO if I hadn't used them. And it was so quick. I did it on my laptop while sending around my CV.
Smart move, Taryn. Graduated and upgraded. We Buy Cars. Geared for success. Geared for you.
Small businesses are anything but small. They're the backbone of our communities. The dreamers, the doers. The ones who keep Mzansi moving forward. That's why 702 and Capitec Business Banking are putting them in the spotlight. Every Thursday between 6 and 8 p.m. catch Small Business Focus with Capitec, where we showcase the hustle, heart, and the secrets to thriving in today's economy. Your vision matters, and with Capitec, you're never building it alone. Small Business Focus with Capitec, the business bank for everyone. Thursdays between 6 and 8 p.m. on 702. Capitec Bank is an authorized FSP 46669.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
23 minutes now to 8 the time. So I've been lucky enough to bump into plenty of really excellent business academic people. People who run business schools, who teach MBAs. I've bumped into lots of people like that. And because I'm lucky enough to work in radio, I bumped into lots of people who are professional musicians. I've been lucky enough to interview a few once or twice. I've sat next to one on a plane, things like that. I don't think I've ever spoken to someone who's managed to merge the two, and I think maybe it's proof that our society does produce the most extraordinary people. Barry van Zyl used to tour with Johnny Clegg. He played with people like Peter Gabriel or Annie Lennox and Oliver Mtukudzi. Had a really long and a glorious career, if I may say, doing that. And now he's the global MBA program lead at the Henley Business School. Barry, good evening. Thanks for taking the time from both of those things to be our shapeshifter tonight.
Stephen, thank you so much. Yeah, it's lovely to be here. Thanks for the invite. And I'm chuckling at your introduction. Thank you for the kind words. I was kind of sitting here thinking, who are you talking about? Is that me, perhaps?
So, I mean, normally I start with someone sort of, how your career started. For you, I need to start with how you went from one to the other. And I mean, I presume you never give up music if you're a musician. I know that. But how did you end up going from doing one professionally to doing the other?
Well, because I work with a business school, I wish I could say it was strategic, but it actually wasn't. It wasn't at all. And from the outside, I've thought about this a bit, and I guess from the outside, it looks like a big jump from music to business education. But for me, it's kind of felt like a natural progression, and I followed what felt right, and pretty much in the same way as when I started playing drums when I was 5 or 6 years old. And the chord trigger, interestingly enough, has always been the same. And I've whittled that down to visibly changing lives. That's been the trigger, whether I've played drums or been teaching on the MBA, on the MBA program. And so the only difference really is I've swapped the drums for the classroom, And but apart from that, it's still performance. And I have to say, classes of MBAs are a tough audience. And so it's been this interesting shift. Yeah, from I like to think of it as shifting from the business of rhythm to the rhythm of business.
It's a very interesting way to look at it. This is going to be a very strange question, and forgive me, I know nothing about music. I was kicked out of recorder class in Standard 3, Would it have been different if you weren't the drummer? And let me just sort of say, and let me just play into a stereotype for a moment. We all know that lead guitarists of rock bands are prima donnas. They're the fly halves, if you like, the center forwards of a band. A drummer is very much for the team in a way. I realize that you may disagree with that, and I'll be quite happy to hear you disagree. But is there something about drumming that made this easier, or made it just more likely this is the path you would choose?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. When I started, I followed my intuition to play the drum set was so strong that it was kind of like a moth to a flame. I didn't have a choice in the equation when I was really little. So when I was 4 or 5, I was constructing drum sets from my mother's cake tins and stuff, and driving the neighbors crazy. So the drum set was a no-brainer. Much later, when I studied formally, then I started dabbling with other instruments. So I did some years playing double bass. I had a go at violin, but drums always won out. And when I was at proper music school in California, I had to do a harmonic instrument as my second instrument. So then I had to do piano harmony and stuff. But that was all a means to an end in terms of composition. But my primary, my heart was in rhythm and playing drums. And so when I was a kid and I saw older people playing shiny, flashy drum sets, that was it. It was I didn't have a choice after that. So that was definitely my path. And interestingly, what I'm doing now at the business school and with lots of the corporate development work I do, or leadership development, a lot of it's based on rhythm and cycles and pulse, and this notion of groove, the sort of musical term for a state of flow. So this is the part that's fascinating me now, and I can see that there's a clear transference of that to teams and leaders in businesses. So rhythm and pulse and cycle have stayed with me very strongly all the way.
It's interesting you talk about a sort of groove of business.
Yeah.
So you're talking about how a business gets going. A beat. The thing about it, and the thing about a groove is that it repeats itself and can build on itself, I suppose. And is that what you're talking about within a business?
Yeah, I am. A drum it's about translating a drummer's groove into something that a CEO can actually understand. And so I'm trying to ground this in science and also in experience. And groove's what happens between members of a band, not just the drummer, by the way. It's a relational thing. And so I'm now fascinated by the deep roots that I'm seeing emerging in physics, in neuroscience, in embodied human behavior. And what I've figured out is that leaders in business understand that. They understand flow states and peak performance and team alignments, but they're all not quite groove. Groove encapsulates all of this. So I've kind of taken what I've lived in elite music performance and combined it with leadership theory, and kind of found a common language. sort of between the concert stage, I guess, and a I don't know, a boardroom. So that's been the process.
I mean, music. I mean, this is such a silly thing to say because it's said so often, but music sort of moves your soul. It changes your mood. It makes you feel in a particular way, and business leaders do absolutely the same thing. If you stand up and speak to people, you're not singing to them, but you are moving them. You're having the same impact.
Yes. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. It's an embodied experience, and the thinking comes later. It's kind of more intelligent than thinking. It's a deeper intelligence, and that for me is what the interesting part about groove is, and I think that's what brought me to the drum set as a kid, and I saw the effect on people, and I've just followed that.
Mm. You mentioned that your second sort of instrument, so you had to do a harmonic instrument, was a piano.
Yeah.
And I am, just to sort of change the subject slightly, interested in whether that was because I think your dad played piano and you played the drums with him. And that must have been a very powerful memory. And you must have had, I mean, I feel for your neighbors, but you must have had very forgiving parents to give you a drum set or to let you play with one or to give up the cake tins. And that must have played a big role. And where I'm sort of going with this is leadership and good drummers and good MBA heads need not just the raw talent, which clearly you had in the desire, but an enabling environment too. And your parents must have provided that?
Yeah, absolutely. They both did. You know, my dad played piano by ear, so he wasn't a school musician. So the same as me, actually. And my mom just encouraged it. She loved the creativity. She was a very creative spirit. And my dad, in his wisdom at the time, which was quite a bit of an outlier sort of mindset, because we were in a little, you know, he was in the motor industry in the Eastern Cape, and didn't come from a musical background. But when he saw that he couldn't keep me away from a path in music, he said that if I'm going to pursue this seriously, I should study business first and then go and study music in America, which was really kind of future facing for that time. And so that's exactly what I did. I actually went and did a marketing diploma at Wits, and then went to California and studied music formally. So there was complete support from them, but they didn't understand what I was trying to do, and they didn't understand where I was going, but they could see the passion and they supported that, you know, and I'm grateful for that forever.
You had a career touring. You toured with Johnny Clegg in particular for a long time. You performed with a lot of other people, and what I see when I see musicians do that on a stage is I'm seeing the glamorous side, right? I'm not seeing the hours of rehearsal. I'm not seeing the banging of the head because the song just won't work or whatever it is. But what I did want to ask specifically about touring, is it that much fun, or is it a bit of a slog?
Stephen, it's such fun. Everybody should have a go at it. Should have the chance. No, it's probably the thing I miss the most. I do love traveling. And when I transferred in about 2015, I guess 16, I started getting more interested in business education than playing music. I was feeling a bit one-dimensional in the performance of music, but I still loved the traveling, interestingly. And so to answer your question, it's an incredible amount of fun. It does depend on the scale of the tour, and with 20 odd years with Johnny, the quality of touring was very good, and so it was well organized, and it is fierce and it is ferocious, because normally the production will try and fit in as many performances per week, and normally every performance is a different city. So in North America, for instance, you can only really start to make a dent in the market by touring for 3 months and playing 5 cities a week. So it is daunting and brutal from that point of view. But the idea of just popping up into a different city every day with this routine of not having to think about anything but, the tour manager would give you your room key, you'd sleep a bit, go and do a sound check, play this glorious show for a room full of people, have some fascinating conversations afterwards, and the next day just repeat the whole thing. And then there is the romance of the tour bus, the band tour bus around North America, which is a wonderful experience. So as you can hear by my voice, I'm still kind of in that, and I miss that actually. That was so touring is a really fun occupation, and I'm hugely grateful for having had the opportunity to do that, for 2 decades.
I'm suddenly slightly jealous about it, I must say, the idea of that. And having it organized for you, Barry. Oh, that's the most exciting. We're talking to Barry van Zyl. He's the Global MBA Program Lead at the Henley Business School, been a professional drummer for many years as well, as you can hear. 10 minutes to 8.
As leaders in renewable energy finance, Nedbank has a track record spanning over 100 years. From pioneering large-scale solar and wind farms to financing complex energy infrastructure in emerging markets, Nedbank offers clients deep sector expertise, combined with the ability to navigate the unique challenges of Africa's just energy transition. See money differently. Nedbank. Nedbank is a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
Take your leadership to the next level. Wits Business School, in partnership with France's top-rank Kedge Business School, is launching the Wits Kedge MBA in Global Executive Leadership, a powerful new program designed for senior leaders ready to think globally and lead with impact. Join the online information session on the 20th of November at 5:30 p.m. to discover how this world-class MBA can transform your career. Register now at wbs.ac.za. That's wbs.ac.za. The Wits Kedge MBA in Global Executive Leadership, shaping global leaders for a changing world.
Imagine a place where festive lights sparkle, kids laugh, and every treat and treasure you buy changes a life. That's the Parkview Christmas Market. Join us from 21 to 23 November at George Hay Park for 100 unique food and craft stalls, a sparkling oyster bar, live entertainment, and a kids' activity wonderland. Every purchase supports local charities, bringing joy to those in need. Bring your family, friends, and festive spirit. Parkview Christmas Market, where joy meets giving.
At Chamberlain's, there's something for everyone. From building supplies for the home renovators to garden essentials for the homemakers. From power tools for the DIY doers to painting supplies for the patio Picassos. We even have coffee for the slightly sleepy and snacks for the young ones. And for the ones who can never quite find what they're looking for, we have you covered too. With our promise to find and source whatever you need. Chamberlain's, famous for hardware since 1903.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by Absa CIB, unlocking growth potential in over 125 black-owned SMEs through the Heineken Beverages Ukukula Fund. Absa is a registered FSP.
The Money Show.
Shapeshifters.
8 minutes to 8 the time. Continuing our conversation with Barry van Zyl, the Global MBA Program Lead at the Henley Business School. Barry, I'd like to talk about the MBA side, if I may, for a moment. And there was a time when an MBA in the 70s and 80s in particular was really the gold standard. You had one of those. People kind of stand up when you entered the room. Does it still have that prestige? I mean, there are a lot more people with them for a start. And an MBA is obviously still very important, but I mean, has it maybe lost a little bit of that luster?
I think the past vision or the traditional vision of the MBA has perhaps lost some luster, and that's as a mechanism to climb the corporate ladder, which I think was the initial gloss on the MBA. But what we're finding now at Henley is that we're getting a lot of unusual candidates for the MBA. We're getting a lot more unusual candidates, me being a case study in one of those. But we're getting entrepreneurs, founders, people pivoting in careers and so forth, and maybe wanting to go from the corporate, sort of from an employee to an employer kind of status. And that for me is really interesting, and I think that's the future of the MBA. So in a very uncertain future. I think the short-term future has never been more uncertain, and especially with the advent of artificial intelligence, which is kind of top of mind.
Yeah.
The route of studying a specialty is probably not as attractive anymore, and a generalist program like the MBA is arguably the best preparation for an uncertain future, because you kind of learn a little about a lot, and you're not sticking yourself in one sort of deep slice of expertise. So I think that the MBA is still relevant, but for highly relevant, but for different reasons than it was, say, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago.
I mean, there are lots of consequences that AI could bring us, but one of them may be that actually there's a premium on more higher education. To be involved in business, you'll actually have to be better educated, not less. Yes,
absolutely. And you were talking. You said earlier you were talking about my transference to the. I take care of the global MBA program, which is Henley's kind of flagship MBA. But I also teach on the MBA program. I teach a module called personal development, and out of this module, a book got born that I wrote with my colleague in the UK, Dr. Chris Dalton, and I've been doing a fair amount of talks about the book, and really what it's about is it's the stuff that AI can't do, because AI certainly can't grooves beyond AI.
Yeah.
And so the concept here is how do we champion humanity with AI, empowered by AI. So humans that understand AI very well is kind of the future of leadership. And so this book is looking at that. The foundation of the book is kind of looking at that from different lenses.
I do want to ask about higher education as well, and we're going to run out of time in a moment. At the moment, many institutions like yours, you offer your degree through other institutions. So Henley, Gibbs is through the University of Pretoria. It looks like the higher education department is going to change that, and we're going to see private institutions conferring degrees. And I look at the business of higher education in South Africa, and I think, man, oh man, the only way that there is can be up. There must be such demand for it. Do you see it like that?
Yeah, I do. And the appetite for learning is definitely elevating. And that's I think all across sub-Saharan Africa, not just South Africa. So yes, I think the appetite for a quality qualification, and then there is of course a difference between where you do something like an MBA, and I think a lot of people that are speculating as to which institution to go to are looking for global integration and looking at which programs are triple, quadruple accredited. Which what MBA can you do in Southern Africa that would hold value globally, and that kind of thing. And so I think there's a big appetite, and I think rightly so. And I think we as we get into a truly global market, things like global MBAs are going to be a very attractive option.
Barry, we've got a minute left. What do you do for fun? And I'm sure that music is part of some of what you do for fun.
Interestingly, I don't play music at all anymore, Stephen. I took the decision that I didn't want to be playing in a pub on a Sunday night and be the guy that used to play in a band.
Yeah. No, that's very wise, I must say, and hard.
And so I like going to watch music, but and I'm still involved with certain friends in the industry. I still make a little bit of music. I'm still connected to my friends in the rap band The Antwoord, and we trade things around every now and again. I love them. They're probably my most inspiring creative colleagues, And but for fun, I go for fun. I run and I read, and I've just started my doctorate, so I've got various things on the go. But I like activity. I like running, and I like boxing and physical stuff.
Barry, it's been great to talk to you. I really appreciate the story. Thank you for spending the time with us.
It's my pleasure, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Barry van Sales, Global MBA Program Lead at the Henley Business School. It's such an interesting story. So many different ways of looking at life coming out of that, and so many different ways of looking at business coming out of that as well.
The Money Show, Stephen Grootes, is brought to you by ABSA CIB, unlocking growth potential in over 125 black-owned SMEs through the Heineken Beverages Ukukula Fund. ABSA is a registered FSP.
Well, in US stock markets, the wait for Nvidia's results continues. In the meantime, though, shares sliding again. The Dow Jones is down 0.07%, the Nasdaq down 0.15%, the S&P 500 down 0.16% at the moment. Everyone waiting to see what will come after the close in the US from Nvidia. We'll have more from the B20 tomorrow. Looking forward to it. It's good to have you along with us on the Money Show. It's 8 o'clock.
This is EWN.
Good evening, I'm Mikey Malapo. ANC parliamentarian and former Minister Malusi Gigaba is giving up his party political roles after appearing in the dock yesterday on corruption charges. Gigaba's voluntarily stepped aside from party activity, which includes his duties as National Executive Committee member. However, Gigaba has not clarified how this step-aside decision will affect his parliamentary roles or his position as MP, saying the step-aside rule applies to ANC roles only. Lindsay Dentlinger has more.
In a statement from the ANC, the party says Malusi Gigaba has taken a principled decision to step
to ANC roles only. Lindsay Dentlinger has more.
In a statement from the ANC, the party says Malusi Gigaba has taken a principled decision to step aside.